name is Colin Kane. I'm the director of the Texas Rural Cooperative Center. I work here at the University of Texas Rio Grande Valley Center for Sustainable Agriculture and Rural Advancement. And today you're here for a presentation by our agricultural expert, Cruz Salinas, on installing drip irrigation systems. Here in, it can apply broadly, but we're talking here about the Valley. We're talking about South Texas. This webinar is brought to you by two projects that we have here at the center, by the Beginning Farmer and Rancher Project and by the Rural Texas Prosperity Project. Both are focused on different aspects of sort of small to medium scale agriculture in South Texas. And so I'd like to introduce our presenter today. It was the same presenter as last week. So this is the second of a series of 3 trainings that we're doing. The next one will be next Tuesday at 10 o'clock on tomato and watermelon production. Cruz did our first webinar as well, and that was on asparagus production, and it was great, and that ultimately will probably live on our YouTube page, so please go check it out. So Cruz Salinas, he's an agriculture specialist here at UTRGV, Center for Sustainable Agriculture and Rural Advancement. He's had over 30 years of experience in the agriculture industry, primarily with agricultural equipment, but he also worked for USDA for about 7 years on specialty crop trials. And so Cruz, again, he works for our Beginning Farmer and Rancher Project. And Cruz, do you want to take it away?
Thank you, Colin. Thank you for the introduction.
Wait, quickly before we start. So everyone who's attending right now, so our question and answer process for this is that if you have questions, please include it on the bottom ribbon. There's a little button that says Q&A. If you have questions as they go on, please put your questions in that Q&A function. And then at the end, I will be reading through the questions and then I'll present them back to Cruz. So we're gonna do all that at the end. And then if there's still some pending questions at the end, we might allow some people get on the mic and sort of have some direct sort of audio Q&A with Cruz. But Cruz, sorry for the interruption. Please go ahead and take it away.
No problems. Thank you, Colin. Once again, thank you everyone for joining us today. The installation of the drip irrigation system that we're going to have today or present is going to be done inside a high tunnel which measures 20 by 68. But just a quick note, if you see on the screen, you'll see some gardens to the right and to the left of this high tunnel. The basic drip irrigation system that's being installed in the high tunnel would be identically the same that would be installed on your raised bed gardens that are on each side of this tunnel house, with the exception of maybe less rows or longer rows. Just a quick note on that. In building this drip or putting together this drip irrigation system, believe it or not, all you need is just 2 simple tools. Your red tool there is a combination of a poly pipe cutter. It's that piece that's on the inside with that sharp edge. And it is also a hole puncher, which is required for installing the fittings. And something as simple as scissors, and you may use a knife, but I prefer scissors to be used for the assembly of this drip irrigation system. As I mentioned earlier, the irrigation system to be installed in this tunnel house is going to be almost, if not the same, as an in-ground raised bed garden. Here you're going to see an actual material list of the materials required for the putting together of this drip irrigation system. It might not come out very well on your screen, but if I remember right, the total dollar amount for this irrigation system was about $230. The quantity of materials used were for 9 rows, each 64 feet in length. Here we have an actual layout of the drip irrigation system that we're about to install. uh, one of the things that you need to do is a layout. One, it helps in the process of having the correct fittings, the right amount of fittings, and having to make 2 or 3 trips when you start a project to where maybe you're short on one fitting or another, and having to run back and forth and purchasing other stuff that you need to finish your project with. I'm going to go over the materials list. That way, as I'm talking on this PowerPoint, you'll be able to identify the actual fittings and timers and poly tubes and so forth, so on that I'm talking about. We're going to start on the bottom left-hand corner with the timer. And right now, I'm just going to basically point out the parts on this material list. And as we go along, I'll talk about a little bit more in detail of the actual material list. We have the timer, and then right next to it, you're going to have your backflow valve, and right next to that, which you can see like a 10 psi, that's going to be your regulator. Then right next to that, you're going to have your fitting adapter, which is the white one, and also the black one. That's also called a poly tube fitting adapter. That long piece of pipe, that's your poly pipe. Then here is your elbow, and there's another piece of poly pipe, another elbow. In this particular drip irrigation system that I've set up, the actual poly pipe that we used for the supply is going to be the same poly pipe that we used as a manifold, and I'll go into detail that in just a little bit. At the end of this poly pipe, you have your close-end fitting, and these blue fittings with your on-off valves. That's what supplies your water to your T-tape, which is these black strips here. And on the end of the T-tapes, each one has another close end to shut off the water from coming out on the ends. You have your staples that hold down the T-tape, and then of course your tools, which is your scissors and your hole puncher and cutter. First, we're going to start off with your water supply. Your water supply that is being used for this project is straight right out of the faucet. The actual water being supplied to the faucet can be from several areas. It can be supplied from the city. It can be supplied from rural water districts like North Alamo and so forth, so on. It can be supplied from a pond. It can also be supplied from water wells. Now, your source of water determines on some extra materials or fittings that may be required when installing a drip irrigation system. For instance, when you use the water straight out of the faucet that's supplied by a city or a water district, the water is pretty much clean. So there's not necessarily a reason to put a water filter in your system. But if you get your water from a pond, a well, or from a canal, then I strongly recommend that some type of filtration system is installed prior to the faucet, or coming right out of the faucet. All the debris and all the stuff that's in the canal or the ponds will plug up the small emitters in your drip tape. Also, what source of water supply that you get also depends on some of the pressure regulators and valves that I'll be talking about here in just a little bit. The the first unit that we're going to install is a single timer unit. I'm going to talk a little bit about timers because there's so many available out there. This particular unit is a digital battery operated timer, and it has a single outlet. All depending how big the area is that you're going to water determines how many outlets that you would prefer on having on your timer. You have timers with a single outlet. You'll have timers with two outlets, which will be right beside it. You'll have timers with four outlets. And basically what it is the more outlets you have, the more zones you'll be able to drip irrigate, and the more area, of course, you'll be able to drip irrigate also. Some of them are very, very simple. They just have your automatic system. Once you have your clock set, once you have your start time set, how long you're going to water and how often you're going to water, set it on auto, and it does everything by itself. Your timers that have two or more outlets will have the system where you actually these three or four settings that you have will be for each and every single timer. And I'm going to spend a little time on this, even though that we don't have it this, because this might save you time and money somewhere down the road, especially if you're going to expand your drip irrigation system. Basically what it means is, let's say in this case, I had one tunnel. So all I really require is one outlet to run the drip irrigation system here. But let's say I had two tunnels or three tunnels or four tunnels. Basically what I would do is I would hook up tunnel number one to this outlet, tunnel number two to the second outlet, tunnel number three to the third outlet, and tunnel number four to the fourth outlet. This way, which I'll talk about here in just a little bit, you'll be able to water with the same faucet, with the same water pressure, all four areas or all four tunnels through a period of time. The next item that's going to be installed is mostly known as a backflow valve. When you go purchase it, sometimes they'll call it a vacuum breaker. It's got a different names. And basically what a backflow is, it's a preventive device that is used to protect potable water supplies from contamination or pollution due to backflow. And you know, how does this happen? Well, backflow occurs when this back pressure or siphonage that causes water to run in reverse of the normal direction of the flow. One instance or example that this may happen is you may be watering or drip irrigating your tunnel house, and somewhere down the road there's a fire. Basically what the fire engine goes, they go to their hydrant, they turn on their fire hydrant, and there's just so much pressure coming out of that fire hydrant that it creates a vacuum. And basically what it does is any unit or any watering system that is open that does not have a backflow valve, basically when they open that fire hydrant, it sucks water out, creating like a siphon effect. And if you're actually drip irrigating at that time and you're applying some type of fertilizer into your crop, it will actually suck that fertilizer into your potable water, your drinking water, which is not good. So it's very, very important to install a backflow valve. You also want to attach a regulator. in this case, all depending on the application, I'm using a 10 PSI, and some people might ask, well, what does a regulator do, or how does it work? Well, it's pretty simple. There's a spring that the stem holds where the flow area open lets water through. When the water passes through the high pressures, the pressures acts on the diaphragm and it forces the spring to compress. And this pushes the stem towards the seat. And in this area, the area closes just enough to maintain that set pressure, okay? Most households that are being built today, if you'll notice, when you go outside, your faucets have a little fitting that's installed to the end of that hose bib. That actually is a backflow valve. I don't know if it's being mandated by the cities or what, but most of the units that I've seen recently here that are being built have them installed. And when your drip irrigation system is being installed, you need to also regulate how much pressure and flow you're going to have into your area. I've noticed that normally the house pressure is between 50 to 70 psi. If you live out in the country, it's basically the same. Now, I've seen some areas where if you really live out in the country and you live far away from what we call a push station that provides the water to your household, you may have less water pressure. So it's important to know how much pressure you have. This, the next item that I have installed in this irrigation system is a bib adapter, and it's for an automatic fertilizing system, and this one's attached to the regulator. Now, this adapter is what creates what you would call maybe like a siphon effect or a Venturi effect that allows the injection of the solution of the drip irrigation system. This piece right here, or these next two pieces that I'm going to mention, or the next two slides, are optional. And the only reason you would use these is if you are going to apply a fertilizing system. The good part about, or the nice thing about this particular system or unit that I'm using is you can literally take it on and off without, maybe like in 30 seconds. It's very easy to connect and disconnect. There are a lot of types of systems out there for fertilizing your garden or your plot. The unit that you decide to install all depends on the actual size of your garden or your plot and how much pressure and flow that you have. Here at the end, I'll be talking about a flow rate on how to determine how much flow that you have and so forth, so on. Here we have time. It's a little long and lengthy, but I want to make sure I have enough time to mention all the parts used for this drip irrigation system. This particular unit that I used also requires a maximum PSI of 50 PSI. Okay, so that's the other thing, why you need to know how much pressure you have on your household or what you're supplying your water with. The unit that I'm going to be using or showing here in just a little bit requires a special ink to show you if the fertilizer is coming out or not. But on this next slide, you have that fitting that would be attached to the bib adapter, and that's where your hose is going to go. That's just taking it one step further, but I'm going to go back now to the actual fertilizer unit. This is the way the fertilizer unit is hooked up. If you notice, you have a black hose that goes into the bib, and you have a clear hose that's on the bottom. And your black hose is your inlet, your white hose is your outlet. And basically you fill your container with water, and you also apply in the container the amount of fertilizer that you're going to use uh, in that plot area. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there's several different types of units, several different types of sizes and shapes of fertigators that can be used for applying fertilizer through the drip irrigation system, which is called fertigation. And this is just real simple. Basically, what you do is just turn on the faucet, and the black hose goes into your container, creates that venturi or that siphonage effect, pushes the water out through the clear tube, which in turn goes into your drip irrigation system. Now, if you do not want to use a fertilizer application system in your garden, you would just put your female hose thread swivel adapter straight into your regulator. Into your regulator, you're going to attach a piece of hose that goes literally all the way to the ground, because you're going to run into your drip irrigation system that is inside that tunnel house. You'll see it here in just a second. At the end of that hose, you're going to install your first elbow. And I mean, it's pretty simple. You're just going to put that on there so that now you can run your hose that's going to come out from the outside into your tunnel house. The poly hose that you're installing here is coming, like I said earlier, from the outside to the inside. Now, if you were doing an outside drip irrigation system, basically this line may be shorter or longer. You just cut all these poly pipes according to the length that you need. They come in a 50-foot roll or a 100-foot roll or a 1,000-foot roll. You're going to install the elbow to that end. And at this point, even though, like I said earlier, the poly pipe hose, now it's going to be called a manifold, okay? And the reason for that is on this particular piece is where we're going to be puncturing the holes, installing the fittings, applying the drip irrigation tape so that we can water our plot. Once you have your manifold set up, the next thing you want to do is you want to turn on your faucet, you want to turn on your system and flush the system out. This is very, very important. Even though that maybe you have just purchased your materials, that poly hose could have been laying in the warehouse for a long time before it was sold to you. You may have, had it laying down at your place for 2 or 3 days before you actually install the system. And you want to flush it out because, no telling what kind of critters got in there, started maybe build a little nest. And if you leave it in there, it's just going to plug up the entire water system. Saves you a lot of headaches by flushing the system out. You need to do that every single time. The next step you got to do is just turn your faucet off. You're gonna shut or close with a close end fitting at the end. Very simple. All you do is just fold the poly pipe into, you need maybe 2 or 3 inches, and just slip the close end forward. The next thing you want to do is you want to measure out your row spacing. Uh, in this case, we're going to have 9 rows, uh, 64 feet in length. And I just went and I just marked the equal spacing uh, for each row where I was going to apply uh, a drip line. Now we start to lay out the drip tape. Uh, Normally the drip tape comes in a roll of 1,000 linear feet. Uh, I built just a small little apparatus where I can hang or slide in the roll of T-tape and just pull the T-tape so it can come out straight, the full length of the application of where I'm putting, whether it's inside a tunnel house or on raised bed. Uh, the T-tape that's being used here has 12-inch emitters or spacing, and we purchased a 1,000-foot roll, so we had enough T-tape for this application with 1 roll of T-tape. To install the fitting that where we're going to install the drip tape, you got to puncture a hole where you mark the row spacings on your manifold. In this case, we'd be punching 9 holes at the spacing that we had set using the hole puncher. The fittings that are to be used for the drip tape, you have several types of fittings, several sizes. That goes to say for your manifold and your supply tube and so forth, so on. In this case, we were using the 1/2-inch poly, and I'm going to be using the fitting on the right, which has a on-off valve. Now, this fitting costs a little more than this fitting that just slips on. It does have advantages using the on-off fitting. One of them is, let's say your drip tape gets cut, it gets a leak, you want to repair it. You don't have to shut the whole system down. All you have to do is go to that valve, turn it off, repair your drip tape, and turn it back on. Another good advantage is that, let's say you're planting different types of vegetables in that same plot area. One vegetable may be ready to harvest in 30 days. Another vegetable may take 60 days, 90 days to harvest. So basically what you would do is after the 30 days of harvest on that particular vegetable, you could literally shut that row off and maintain the same time and same drip irrigation system on your other rows. In this case, I would have 9 rows. What's really neat about this type of system is you can run 1 row at a time, you can run 2 rows, 3 rows, all 9 rows. So if, let's say, for example, I was growing, let's say, a short crop like radish on 2 rows, and I was growing cabbages on the next 2. In this case, the radishes would be ready to harvest in 30 days. If I didn't want to harvest anything or plant anything else in those 2 rows, I would just shut the valve off. On the other rows, of course, the cabbage takes up to 3 months, so I would leave that valve on. That's a great advantage of using that. If it costs a little bit more, but it's a way to go. To install the drip tape into the valve, one thing that I need to note is, as I mentioned earlier, this drip tape has an emitter every 12 inches. And the emitter basically it's already installed in the drip tape, and that's where the water comes out. You need to have at least 2 inches of clearance uh, uh, before the emitter is, so that it can slip inside your fitting. If you cut it right where the emitter's at, let's say the emitter was right here, then you would have problems slipping the nut over that emitter, and it would leak on you. So in this case, the emitter is right under the scissors. So we have at least 2 or 3 inches there, which works fine. These particular fittings are sometimes hard to install, the drip tape. The reason for that is you literally got to slip the drip tape in and turn the nut to lock it into place. Sometimes that can be a little cumbersome. But once you get it on, they don't come off. And basically what you do is this nut right here, you're gonna turn it counterclockwise till it comes all the way to the base, which is down here. You're gonna slip in your T-tape till it reaches the nut, and then you just turn the nut clockwise and it locks it into place. Once you have that on one end, now you're going to go to the other end and close off the drip line. And here we're using a close end that is a really neat item that they just came out with. At first, you had to, there was 2 or 3 different ways, and they sort of kind of didn't work very well because they would cut the drip tape here and it would leak. But this system works really nice. And basically what you do is, once again, the emitter comes into play. The emitter is right here and it's 12 inches. So I cut off the last emitter, which would be right here. So now you actually have like 11 inches of drip tape. And basically all you do is just fold it once and fold it twice. And then you just slip the close end over the folded line. Very, very simple, holds it in place. You have no leaks. This works really, really nice if you have a small plot, small garden. The other methods and the other fittings that are out there normally have these tend to leak and you have a big wet spot at the end. These don't. These work very, very nice. The next thing you want to do is, while you're at this end over here installing the close end, you want to pull that line as tight as you can, and then go and install some staples at maybe 2 or 3 different points throughout the length of your drip line. And basically the reason for that is of our high winds that we have down here, even inside the tunnel house, and especially on the outside, the winds tend to push the line 3 or 4, maybe 5 inches off to the side, especially when you have a hot day or cold day. This plastic pipe tends to wrinkle up and move over to the sides. And when you turn the water on, and if it's over to the side, now you're not watering the water where you actually want it. It's watering it over to the side. So those staples are very, very important to hold the drip line and tape in check. Here we have the completed drip irrigation system. We have the manifold. We have the 9 lines. I'll go in the length of the tunnel house. Once this is set, then you're ready to drip irrigate. A lot of questions that I have is how much and how often do I drip irrigate? That's $1 million question. That all depends on how much pressure you have, how much flow you have, how many lines you have, what type of soil you have. We down here in the valley, we have all 4 different types of soils. We have the sandy loam, we have the clay loam, and some soils retain water better than others. Sandy loam, I mean, you can water one day and by the next day it's all gone. A clay loam, you can water and it retains it for 2-3 days. So it just all depends what type of soil conditions you have mainly. The question is, how much do I water also? That also depends, 1, on the crop, and 2, the time of the crop that's been planted. Here we have as a small circle, what I call a small circle drip irrigated area. And if you notice, these are at exactly the emitters are exactly 12 inches apart, and that's where your circles are actually watering. One of the benefits of using the 12-inch emitter system is that when you're applying or you're transplanting most of the crops that are grown down here, you can use it as a layout. In this case, like if you would be growing broccoli, you'd be growing cauliflower, you'd be growing cabbage, something like that. This would be perfect for where each circle is. That's where either you would put your seeds or your transplant, because that's how much area is required for that particular plant. This is one of the benefits of the drip irrigation system, that you can apply the water exactly where you want it, and you can apply how much you want for any particular crop. Yeah, on the next slide here, we have where the lines are almost touching but not quite touching, and I call that a medium circle. At this point, it's another type of vegetable that you would grow that you want to apply this much water. And now you're talking maybe like your onions, which don't require that much space, more space as a broccoli or a cauliflower plant. Your beets, something like a baseball size, where now you want the spacing of maybe 4 to 6 inches. So this is almost the setting of where you would want your drip irrigation time to be set at. And as I mentioned earlier, if all depending on the soil condition is how long it's going to take for you to get at this point as far as the circles are concerned. This one is a complete, where the circles have actually touched, they're overlapped each other. This is a good way of telling the clients that when you're planting real small vegetables that need to be watered very closely, is like your carrots, your radishes, where if you do a half circle or a small circle, what's in between those circles is not going to get watered. But in this case, everything that's in that area is going to get watered. And if you notice, it's got like about a 12-inch width. That's as far as you want it to water. There's no reason to be watering the furrow. You just be watering the weeds and so forth, so on. So this would be a good way to determine how much water to be applied when you're growing your crops. Here you'll see where I have planted a cover crop. Here are the, in this particular case, on the 20 by 68 with 9 rows, I used a 1/4 pound of iron clay peas. And I know we have a little time for questions, but I'm going to take 5 minutes to explain what a flow chart is. A flow chart basically is going to determine how much pressure and how much water you have coming out of your faucet. And when you purchase your supplies, especially your T-tape, this is very, very important to know uh, because it tells you how much uh, area you're able to water at one time. And there's a simple equation that's used, and I'm going to go back to see if I can. I thought I had it here, but I guess I didn't put it in. And basically what it is, I'll try to explain it the best way I can, is you're going to have your volume times your seconds, and you're going to divide it by the time that it took to fill that volume, okay? So a real good example is you're going to take a 5-gallon bucket and you're going to fill it up with water. You're going to time how long it takes to fill that 5-gallon bucket with water, okay? So the equation is a 5-gallon bucket times 60 seconds, which is 300. That's going to be your volume. Then you're going to divide it by the time, or how many seconds it took to fill that 5-gallon bucket. In my case, I took a 5-gallon bucket. It took me 140 seconds to fill up. So I'm going to take 300 and divide by 140, and that's going to give me 2.14 gallons per minute. Okay, that's what's going to be required, or that's how much I'm able to drip irrigate on my farm. Now, to determine if you have enough to do that area in your tunnel house, or where we just explained, it's very simple, because we have 9 rows. They were 64 feet. So it was a total of 576 linear feet, okay? So in this case, the drip line that I was using, and anywhere you buy your drip line, it's gonna give you this volume. It takes 0.22 gallons per minute for every 100 feet, okay? So all I did was I divided my 576 linear feet by 100, and I got 5.76, which is almost 600-foot sections. So I multiplied those 5.76 times 0.22, which is the gallons per minute required for every 100 foot, and it's 1.26 gallons per minute, what is required for that space, okay? So in my faucet, I had 2.14, so I would have no problems whatsoever with this type of drip irrigation system being used in this tunnel house. As a matter of fact, if I had 2.14 and I had 1.26, I could almost water 2 tunnel houses of the same length, as far as the total linear feet is concerned. I know that's kind of hard, and it's kind of confusing at this point, but wherever you purchase your drip tape, it's going to give you this information. And this information, as far as the quantity is concerned, the gallons per minute, you have to use that information according to the drip tape that you purchase, because each one's going to be different. Some might have less emitters, some might have more emitters. At this time, I'm going to pass it over to
All right.
Color.
Yeah, Cruz, thank you so much. That was great. I would like to remind everybody, so the point of having a training like this is to give sort of broad information about, so in this case, drip irrigation in general. everyone's going to have their own specific questions, their own circumstances. It could be that you're a backyard gardener, that you're starting for the first time. It could be that you're a very experienced gardener. It could be that you sell already at farmers markets and you're just trying to expand your production. Each of those circumstances, each of those situations is going to lead to a different set of questions for crews. Now, everyone has the opportunity to, at the bottom of your Zoom screen, click on the button that says Q&A and enter a specific question for crews. Or alternatively, there should be a button again at the bottom of your Zoom screen, or sometimes it's on the right-hand side, that says hand. And if you either enter your question in the QA or raise your hand, we should be able to give you an opportunity to ask that question directly to crews. Now, alternatively, at the end of this presentation, as Cruz is currently showing right here, he has his email address. We also have the Facebook addresses for two of our projects that have experts both on drip irrigation and other areas of agriculture. If you need sort of follow-up assistance, if you're installing this stuff on your property and you want more of a little bit more hand-holding, either to talk you through it or to figure out like where to purchase things, or the best rig to sort of set that up on, contact Cruz, contact us via Facebook if that's where you like to do business, and we will get back to you as soon as possible. So right now we have a couple questions on Q&A, but there are going to be hopefully a couple more flowing in because they usually flow in at the end. I don't see any hands raised yet, but I'm going to get to that in a second. In the meantime, I'm going to launch a poll here that has a couple questions to basically get a sense for how people want to use this information for themselves, and then what other topics people would like to hear from Cruz would like to hear from our other experts on. And so I'm going to launch that right now. So in the next couple minutes, take a look at the poll. Please answer the questions if you can. And during that time as well, take some questions to enter in some of these questions through the Q&A and then raise your hand. And so I'm going to read through the Q&A first. And then if there are still people with their hands up at the end, I will get to those people. So right now, Cruz, would you be willing to, so we have a few questions about whether we will be willing and able to share this presentation. If you contact us directly through Facebook, or if you email Cruz directly, we can get this material to you. There's some, it's a proprietary document, so we just have to make sure that we are setting up sort of client relationships before we sort of share that type of information. There could be liability, there could be a lot of things. So make sure to contact Cruz or contact us via Facebook. And again, those Facebook, it's Texas Rural Cooperative Center, and it's Beginning Farmer and Ranchers Project. We also have locally, what's the best place to purchase all of these materials, Cruz?
There's a couple of places locally. There's Ewing Irrigation, and there's Irrigation Mart here in the Valley, one in McAllen and the other one in San Juan. But most of this stuff you also can get online.
So online, what are the places where generally, not to say that we're not saying, hey, go to this place and buy it, but generally where are you finding good prices online?
Amazon has, like everything else, there's several out there. You just key in drip irrigation fittings and it'll shoot you out quite a list of suppliers.
Okay. So Cruz, do you have a sense for yourself, the row crops that you're growing? How much water, just volume wise, do you estimate that you're saving on a given crop? Let's take tomatoes, because you're a big tomato grower. Generally, how much water have you estimated that you think you're saving?
Quite a bit, Colin. And to be frank and honest, I have a small acreage farm. It's 2 acres. And I'm able to drip irrigate the entire 2 acres with one faucet using a couple of 4 outlet timers. So, and believe it or not, my water bill is not very, very high in growing crops on a 2 acre, small acre farm.
That's good. We have another question here from Tony Vindell. Is it possible to use a 300-gallon plastic tank, like a water runoff tank, to set up a drip irrigation system on a small plot?
Yes, most definitely. That would be your water source. Now, the thing there is that you would have to connect or adapt or install some type of pump to be able to apply the pressure that's required for your drip irrigation system. Uh, I have had questions asked before if they can use it as gravity flow, and the answer to that is yes. You'd have to have that tank up pretty high, and you'd be limited as far as to how many drip irrigation lines that you could be running at one point because of the amount of pressure that would be coming out of the tank without having any type of pump or that type of system so that you could have any sort of PSI from an outside source.
Great answer. Now, Cruz, it seems that a lot of the questions that are coming in are addressing or are concerned with how applicable what you just covered are to smaller scale, sort of garden scale, maybe like raised beds and sort of boxes scale producers. From what I understand, everything that you just talked about is very much applicable to that scale of production as well. And it's kind of the same equipment. You might not need the same types of pumps and stuff, but it's generally the same kind of stuff, right?
Yes, in actuality, this type of drip irrigation system can be used right out of the faucet, as small as a 4x8 raised bed, using the same fittings, same drip tape, same materials, all the way up to, like I mentioned earlier, up to a two acre block. It just all depends on the setup, how you set it up, and it can be done.
It can be done. And so if people also, again, have specific questions like this, again, email Cruz. We can get your phone number. We can call you up and we can walk you through this stuff. If it's Cruz, if it's some of our other staff that are maybe not as experienced as Cruz, because Cruz is the man, Cruz is the guy. A lot of people also, have good experience with this stuff. So we have a question here from Alicia Taryn. I hope I pronounced that correctly. I used polypipe last year. Can I reuse it this year?
Yes, polypipe literally is indestructible as far as it decomposing. It lasts a very, very long time. I've got some polypipe that's already 7 years old. I recycle most of the stuff. When I'm going to work the area, just take it out and then reuse it. Same goes with all the fittings; they're all poly, and same goes with your drip tape. It lasts I've got some drip tape that's also 5 years old. So,
Yeah. So Alicia also asked if she's going to redo her garden layout, and she already had that poly pipe, but she's going to redo the layout. Would it be easier to start with new piping, or it's just as easy to just reuse what she used before?
it's just a matter of, the financials. You can reuse everything. They make fittings to where one, if you've already punctured holes in it and you're using it for a particular spacing, they make a little fitting that they plug, so you can plug those holes and make new holes. Also, if your line is too short or too long, they have couplings and adapters where you can make the line longer or shorter. Uh, they're readily available. So yes, everything you can recycle, reuse. I mean, literally till about the only time that you're not going to be able to recycle is one, if you fail to install a pressure regulator at one point and you actually turn on the valve and it really, really expanded your hose and it busted it, then at that point I would not use that hose anymore, because you don't know when it's going to bust again.
Okay. There were a couple other questions here asking about sort of equipment lists. I know that early on there was a slide that was a little bit, I think it was probably a photocopy of what type of equipment might you need, what are the lists, and what's a basic inventory list. So if you click on the chat function, all the participants here, if you click on the chat function, I've included here a couple of links that I found pretty quickly. Some of it included sort of like a lot of the formula stuff you were talking about, Cruz, in terms of like measuring the sort of volume of water that's coming out and that would be going through your hose. One's from the University of Kentucky, one is from Garden Guides, and then in terms of an inventory list, very quickly I found something from DripWorks. Again, so before actually going out and buying this stuff, if you want to just make sure, hey, is this correct? This is what I think, I'm going to buy, and this is the general budget I'm going to use. If you would like to run that by Cruz or Juan or Albert or Yvonne, any of our sort of ag experts, please let us know. Again, email Cruz, send us a message on Facebook, and we'll contact you right away. But again, so click on the chat function, and there should be some links there that if you open them up on your browser, save them, they should be there after this presentation is over. And again, so we are recording this presentation, which will ultimately, I believe, live on our SATA YouTube page. So if you want to go back and sort of go through any of the steps that Cruz was discussing before calling them up and before sort of drilling down on that stuff. Cruz, we have some more questions. What's the difference between the hoses Cruz uses and the soaker hoses?
Okay, the soaker hose is just basically an entire different animal. The soaker hose actually has no emitters. It has a whole bunch of little porous holes that come out of the actual hose itself. Personally, I don't use them, not for drip irrigation. You can't get a very precise amount of volume of water with the soaker hose as you can with the drip tape. Even though, I mean, it does work, but the precise amount of water used and applied, you can't control.
All right, so it's getting to the end here. I've got one more question that I'm gonna ask, but if anyone would like to just me to activate their microphone for 30 seconds or so to ask a question, on the bottom, click raise your hand. But before we finish, I have one more Q&A question. It's from Lena Romero, and it says, I see you have a high tunnel, Cruz. Do you think that it's advantageous when using drip irrigation? And if that person's a home gardener starting out and both rain and watering by hose, that cause problems, would it make sense for someone at that smaller scale to use a drip irrigation system? Actually,
I have 4 high tunnels, and they're all I use drip irrigation on all of them. The advantage, of course, of high tunnels is, I mean, it's got a lot of advantages, but as far as drip irrigation is concerned, it is how you're going to apply the water inside that area. In a high tunnel, if it rains or it doesn't rain, you can't control the water. So yes, of course, drip irrigation system is the way to go inside a high tunnel.
All right. So I think that's it for the questions. Just one last comment here from our good guest participant on this, Carlos Garcia. He says, this is the second week watching you, Cruz. You're now a celebrity in his book. Thanks for the training. This is great. So, the fame is building, first locally within the Valley, and then South Texas, and then the entire state of Texas, and who knows after that. So that's it. I'd like to thank everybody for coming out. Again, so next Tuesday, we have the third of our training series. We're going to be talking about producing tomatoes and watermelon here at the Valley. We're going to have a few more presenters join us, and hopefully it'll be as informative and as wonderful as this has been. So thanks, Cruz. Thanks for all our participants, and we'll see you next week.
Once again, thank you all very much. Any other questions later on? There is my contact info. You're more than welcome to come. I will answer all questions. Thank you.